During that meeting with him, did you ever express to him your concerns about the severe technology problems and deficits within the FBI?
I expressed to him my concerns, and I gave him copies of the memorandum which outlined my concerns.
And how about your concerns and the problems with the wall, as we're calling it loosely, and legal authorities?
With respect to the wall, I told him that there was an issue with respect to arising out of the Winho Lee report, the Attorney General's Task Force report that Mr. Bellows conducted at my direction, and that there were concerns. It was important that the 1995 memorandum be updated, and Deputy Attorney General Larry Thompson updated it in, I believe, August. I told him that I had not made a decision because we could not reach consensus within the department, and that it was important that they take a look at it as a follow-up. And I didn't want to make a decision that didn't have more consensus attached to it for the new administration that might want to pursue a different course.
Counterterrorism was only one of the priorities for both the Clinton and Bush administrations. Although a complete review of their policy priorities and beyond the scope of this inquiry, several senior officials have suggested the wide range of concerns that faced both administrations. 1. Intelligence community officials with responsibility for resource management noted that a range of regional and global issues were important concerns that policymakers emphasized in allocating resources. 2. Richard Clarke explained that he faced resistance to using military force in Afghanistan, in part because the United States was already bombing Iraq and Serbia. 3. Former Clinton Assistant Secretary of State for both South Asia, Carl Inderforth, noted in an interview that the East Africa embassy bombings made counterterrorism the top U.S. priority in its dealings with the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. Before then, ending the civil war, advancing women's rights, and establishing a broad-based government were U.S. priorities for that country. 4. Mr. Inderforth also noted that concerns about an Indian-Pakistani conflict or even nuclear confrontation competed with efforts to press Pakistan on terrorism. 5. Stephen Hadley noted that Bush administration concerns before September 11th included the P-3 aircraft incident with China and the June 2001 G8 summit. Even those directly involved with counterterrorism efforts focused much of their attention on groups other than al-Qaeda and its affiliates. Richard Clarke told us at the joint inquiry that Iran and the Lebanese Hezbollah were the most important terrorist concerns during the first Clinton administration. This was corroborated by Mr. Lake, who noted that the administration's primary preoccupation was on state sponsors of terrorism, such organizations as Hezbollah. The Iranian-supported attack on the U.S. military at the Khobar Towers in 1996 reinforced this concern, according to Richard Clarke. Several agencies also focused their counterterrorism efforts on force protection. After the embassy bombings, the State Department tried to augment security in its facilities worldwide. Similarly, the attacks on Khobar Towers and the USS Cole led to increased Defense Department and military efforts to protect U.S. military facilities and assets abroad. Moreover, the process of setting intelligence priorities was often confusing. Richard Clarke noted that the White House never really gave good, systematic, timely guidance to the intelligence community about what the priorities were at the national level. Stephen Hadley stated that Bush administration officials were told during the transition that this priority-setting process was not effective for communicating changing priorities over time. Joint inquiry interviews with intelligence community officials suggest that many felt that the prioritization process was so broad as to be meaningless. There were also bureaucratic confusion about responsibility for counterterrorism. Despite efforts by the National Security Council's Counterterrorism Security Group to streamline the process, agencies often did not coordinate their counterterrorism efforts. Mr. Inderfort noted that the State Department had different elements working on counterterrorism in regards to Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, embassy security, and other matters. Former Deputy Secretary of Defense John Hamas noted in an interview that several different components of the Defense Department were involved in counterterrorism, often with little coordination. In accordance with the growing importance of terrorism, Clinton administration officials took several steps to strengthen U.S. counterterrorism efforts. During the late 1990s, CIA initiated a campaign working with foreign liaison services to disrupt and take down al-Qaeda and other terrorist cells around the world. Richard Clarke told the Joint Inquiry that disrupt meant arrest, if possible, have the host country arrest, or if there is any reason to bring them back to the United States, to arrest them and bring them back here. The Clinton administration strongly backed this campaign, according to Sandy Berger, who pointed out that terror cells were dismantled and disrupted in more than 20 countries as a result. Clinton administration used military force, albeit in a limited manner, as is discussed in detail in a separate chapter. And Richard Clarke noted that the retaliatory strike on Iraq in 1993 for its attempted assassination of former President Bush was the first time the U.S. had used military force to punish a state for terrorism since 1986. According to Sandy Berger, the 1998 cruise missile strikes on terrorism-linked facilities in Afghanistan and Sudan meant to demonstrate the Clinton administration's seriousness, as well as to disrupt al-Qaeda's infrastructure. The Clinton administration also initiated an increasingly aggressive covert action policy, also discussed in a separate section. Sandy Berger, Richard Clarke, and Mr. Lake also noted that other measures the Clinton administration initiated, which were increasing intelligence funding after 1995, more than doubling the number of FBI agents devoted to, and more than tripling the FBI budget for counterterrorism, expanding the size of the Counterterrorism Center and other increasing CIA efforts against terrorism, passing the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act in 1996, and legislation to track foreign student visas, pressing CIA to establish an operational unit tracking bin Laden and terrorist financing, encouraging CIA and the FBI to improve cooperation on terrorism, including exchanging senior officials, increasing diplomatic pressure on the Taliban through bilateral discussions, UN sanctions, and freezing of assets. Policymakers report to the Joint Inquiry that they had limited flexibility in regard to Afghanistan. Sandy Berger testified that neither Congress, the media, nor the international community supported invading Afghanistan before September 11th. During the Bush administration, the United States issued a démarche to the Taliban in June 2001, noting that it would be held accountable for al-Qaeda attacks on the United States. Neither the Clinton nor Bush administration aggressively tried to disrupt al-Qaeda financing. Former intelligence community official testified that in 1996 or 1997, the intelligence community had plans the Treasury Department blocked due to concerns about and worries that because of Treasury's concerns, the intelligence community, according to the former official, was limited before September 11th. Richard Clarke noted that counterterrorism officials hoped to appeal Treasury's initial positioning by presenting concrete information on terrorism fundraising. The intelligence community, however, was not able to provide that information.